Come to Candlelight Inn, home of the original Chicken George and Jan Sauce. Dine in, carry out, and catering available. Located in Rock Falls and Sterling, Illinois, as well as Clinton, Iowa. Come try our original Chicken George today.
Need a roof, vinyl windows, or doors? Call R.E. Duchesne Construction. With an A-plus rating for the Better Business Bureau and servicing Will, Grundy, and Kendall counties, call R.E. Duchesne. 815-722-2821. Financing available. Find out more online at reduchene.com.
Are going to come right down to the wire. Yeah, he really likes this field. Team of the Week MVP.
I like Reich.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
We're here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interests. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.
What's up, everyone? I am Kyle Nabors, back here with Steve Soucie. Everyone joining us live here. We're about an hour away from the IHSA brackets being officially unveiled. Souce, good to see you're still awake.
Yeah, I'm holding up pretty well. I have a feeling that a crash is coming sometime soon, but the adrenaline's still pumping. You got all the action that happened today kind of forming out the rest of the back end of that bracket. So I still got a little bit more gasoline in the tank to get her done today.
I finished up with getting everything done on the Friday night drive home page and everything set for the night on social media, and I still had Friday Night Live After Dark set up, and it was about 1:30, and I heard you go, "Is there still 100 people in here? Really?" I thought about jumping back on, but I was dead. I had to get some sleep, but I saw you were hard at work until about 4 a.m. working on some brackets.
Yeah, there were a couple of late developments. I found a out-of-state score that was bad, so I had to go back and edit a couple of brackets. And we talked about it a little bit last night during the regular broadcast, but then it became apparent later in the evening that 4 and 5 teams were going to be a big factor in this field, and that was something that I wasn't necessarily sure was going to happen heading into the week, but. Had a lot of very few upstarts jump into the field, and a lot of teams that were sitting at 4 and 4 that didn't get it done, get to the 5th win. So definitely it was a wild night, but I expected it to be wild, but it was wild in a different way, if that makes any sense.
Dude, how many years I feel like now we've been talking about 4 and 5 teams making the field, and you kind of start to feel like bit of an idiot here, both of us here, because every year you have all these upstarts at 4 and 4 fight their way into the field. Finally, though, we had that year where it didn't happen. It went the other way, right?
Yeah, it did, and it was developing pretty quick, and I was kind of kicking myself a little bit for not really realizing that was going on, because as you're trying to stream through those 4A situations, you're kind of looking at it and just trying to figure them all out. And that list was growing and growing and growing, and the other list wasn't. And I should have seen the difference quicker than I did, but it became apparent, I want to say probably around 11 o'clock, that we were looking at not just one or two of these. We were gonna hit 5, 6, and maybe even get up to 7. We ended up with 6, and that for me is at least proving my point. This was something we definitely should have been keeping an eye on.
So, thank you everyone. First off, thank you everyone who has subscribed to Friday Night Drive all season long. Everyone who's joined us this week, who's been excited to see the playoff projections from Souce. It's been a great ride all season long. We appreciate everyone who's joining us this postseason as well. We're going to have a lot of content for you all postseason long, starting this week too. If you enjoyed the Friday Night Drive podcast with Souce and I, we record that on Mondays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. We're going to start doing that live. If you guys want to join us, ask some questions, we'll be there on YouTube for you. And of course, right now, if you go to FridayNightDrive.com, we have a digital sale going on. You can get yourself a subscription and join the ride. We really do appreciate it. Everyone who works for us is a local journalist in your community. Everyone, like I said, it's local journalism matters. I'll stop my spiel at that point. We got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to get to your questions, everyone who is already here. Appreciate everyone who's on YouTube and throwing questions in there for us. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Souce, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start throwing up the projected brackets, Souce's last projected brackets here this afternoon, and going through those. But a little bit of housekeeping just to set the table. Souce's projections are tremendously accurate, above 90% by the time we get to the end of the day here. But we got to account for things like multiple 3-way tiebreakers, right, Souce?
Yeah, sometimes you get into situations where it's simply a situation where you get through the first 2 stages of points and they're dead tied. And the solution to that, the IHSA calls it a random number generator. Essentially, it's a coin flip. So sometimes that's really hard to obviously guess what a coin flip is going to come out to. So that's why you'll see sometimes teams flipped from my projection to what goes into it. I can't really predict. There's nothing that I can do to predict the results of a random number generator. So I wish there was another layer of tiebreaker, like points allowed or something that would break that tie. It's especially troublesome with undefeated teams that end up with the same number of points because there's not even a second stage tiebreaker for them. If you have the same number of points as an undefeated team, you're basically stuck with the random number generator. There's no way to break the tie. So that's really what some of those things come down to. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 teams involved in the same tie, and really you're just basically pulling marbles out of a bag at that point in time, just to try to guess that correctly. So definitely something that factors in.
So I'm going to go ahead and throw the brackets onto screen now. These aren't the official brackets, by the way. These are Souce's last projected brackets we'll be going through here. And we're going to pop up here at 8 a.m. I want to start there, of course, because the first question I want to get to with you is, Loyola picking up that win this afternoon over Mount Carmel. How did that affect the 7A and 8A brackets?
Well, we were looking at it heading into the situation, and it appeared that we might have, if Loyola would have lost that game to Mount Carmel, we might have a situation where Loyola and Lincoln Way East would have ended up on the same side of the bracket. Well, since Loyola won, that gave the 8A bracket 3 undefeated teams. Loyola has the most playoff points of that group. They edged Lincoln Way East by 1 playoff point. So Loyola shot up to the top of the bracket with that victory. Lincoln Way East number 2, and then the other undefeated team, Barrington, drops down into the 3 seed position. So now you see them on the opposite sides of the bracket from one another. Long way to go, and got to win a lot of football games to get there. But a potential rematch of last year's 8A state championship remains a possibility now. Both of those teams undefeated as they head into the gauntlet.
Pretty cool to see Joliet West up here on a 9 line.
Yeah, definitely an interesting situation for them. Have never hosted a playoff game in school history, are going to get that opportunity to do that. Won their first outright conference championship since, I believe, the late 1960s last night with that win over Plainfield Central. So just a really fun story for them this year. An interesting setup. St. Ignatius was a fought their way up that seed chart a little bit with that win over Joliet Catholic in Week 9. So an interesting matchup for Joliet West in the first round of the playoffs with Division I superstar Justin Scott, who we learned last night has a little bit of adeptness in the backfield. Yeah, so that was interesting to find that as well.
All right, let's dive into some of the questions and comments here. Mike B. Husky. Mike checking in here, my good buddy Mike, usually on the Bears broadcast, checking out on Saturday night for us here. Says those guys from Mount Carmel and Loyola can play a little bit of ball, eh? Yeah, that was a good one this afternoon. Michael Dwojak was over there covering that one for Friday Night Drive. That story is actually up on the website right now if you guys want to check that out. It was a good game, right, Soucie?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I had it on the back screen over here while I was watching and trying to sort things out. And Mount Carmel made a late push there. Loyola getting a big 2-point stop on a big 2-point conversion to secure that victory. Pretty much kind of what you expected, a hard-fought battle between two really, really good football teams. So obviously won't get a chance at a rematch with Mount Carmel in 7A and Loyola in 8A. But both of those two teams, I think, enter the postseason as, if not a lone favorite, still very much a favorite amongst a small group of teams.
Weather on the Go says, I was recruiting people to like the stream. Appreciate it. Very much so. Jimmy says, who's Argo going to play, Soucie? Where's Argo? What class are we looking at here?
They're in 7A. They were projected, but prior to the result of the Loyola Mount Carmel game, to be with Mount Carmel, but since Mount Carmel lost that game, they dropped off the one line. So Normal Community assumes that role now. So that seems to be the logical pairing. I can't release specific bracket information quite yet. That'll come in a little while. But the logical pairing seems to be that Argo will be traveling to Normal Community in the opening round.
Let's see. Snakes 1594 said, quick question. In Class 1A, you had Forston at number 7 seed and Sterling Newman at number 8. NUIC projections had them flip-flop citing tiebreaker rules. What are those tiebreaker rules?
Well, first of all, you got to go to the second stage in regards to tiebreaker. So basically, instead of your whole playoff points, you're now looking to see the playoff points of the teams that you beat in your schedule. So in the case of both Forston and Newman Central Catholic, you would basically subtract the number of wins or playoff points that the opponents that beat you accumulated. And then if that is, there's a difference in that number, whoever has the highest number of playoff points amongst the teams that you beat, will then get yourself into a situation where they would move ahead or behind based on that number. If those two numbers are still tied, the blasted number, a random number generator comes out again to break those up. So that wasn't actually the case right there. That was one of those situations where in putting the bracket together, there were some Saturday results out there that kind of I guess snuck past the goalie and trying to break down those really granular point situations. So that was why Sterling Newman was able to kind of leapfrog over Forston in that situation.
Jose Gutierrez says, did United Township make it?
No, they did not. They did get to 4-5 last night with their win in the Western Big Six play. But they did not have enough accumulated playoff points to be in the race for one of those teams that rounded out our field. We did have 6 of those. You needed, I believe it ended up being 49 points to get in the field as a 4-5 team. I don't think East Moline was exceptionally close to that number, to be honest.
Do you have that information anywhere near you? Like how, like the 6 teams that did get in and maybe like the 5 or 6 that were closest?
Yep. I can pull it up right here.
All right.
Just take me a second, but
that's all right. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and say, if you're watching live on YouTube or on the Friday Night Drive Facebook page, do us a favor, leave a thumbs up. You can comment. If you do not subscribe to the Shaw Local Facebook, I'm sorry, Shaw Local YouTube page. Do us a favor and subscribe, and we really do appreciate it. Outside of that, let's see. Also, yeah, we are taking your questions until 8 o'clock tonight when the IHSA bracket playoff special goes on the air. If you're wondering what channel that is on, we actually have a guide up at FridayNightDrive.com on the homepage right now. It's different for all the different TV markets around the state. So if you don't know, definitely take a look, because I think there was probably at least 12 different ones on there.
Yeah, they're kind of all over the map. It's one of those things where if people ask me where it's going to be on television, I get confused and throw my hands up in the air.
I think there's several markets too where you can only see it streaming at 8 o'clock because there's a college football commitment in those markets.
Yeah, so, some of them have an ACC football arrangement, I believe, that is pushing it on tape delay. So yeah, that's definitely a format. So I have your playoff point information here, Kyle. Okay. The last two teams to get in the field were both Plainfield North and Quincy Notre Dame. They both had 49 points. So they were the last two. They were 255 and 256 in the field. 257 was Marist, who finished with 48 points. LaSalle Peru finished 1 point behind them at 47 points. And then there were two teams with 46, Bureau Valley and Marion Central Catholic.
Bureau Valley and Marion. Ooh, all right.
And on top of that discussion, and we've talked a little bit about Marion Central Catholic before and their difficulty in amassing many points coming down the stretch here. Richmond Burton lost on Friday night too. So that was a point that I think in the grand scheme of things, you would have thought, hey, they're probably going to get their 3 points. And, you know, if they lose, they'll get 4, then they'll get the Richmond Burton point. And we talked a little bit about the Milwaukee Academy of Science, but in reality, they only ended up getting 4 points. So that wasn't enough. They needed to get 5 or 6 to be in that conversation ultimately. And the maximum they could have gotten was 5, and then Richmond Burton didn't win. So, you know, that was kind of the kiss of death for them there, was when not only did they not win the game to get to 5 wins, they also didn't get the point that they were probably expecting that they would get from Richmond Burton.
Jim, I'm going to take a stab at it. Magnifica. I'm going with Magnifica just because it sounds awesome that way. Did Sterling High School make it as a 4-5 5A team? He asked.
Yes, they did. They came in and they finished up with 50 points, which was enough to get them into the bracket. Interesting little side note right there. In the non-conference schedule early this year, they played Metamora and Wheaton St. Francis to start the season. And both of those teams, in my opinion, came up with pretty pivotal points for them by winning in week 9. Metamora played Dunlap, a game that on paper they probably weren't expected to win. They did. And Wheaton St. Francis fended off Nazareth in a game that felt like a bit of a toss-up heading into it. So Sterling was able to pick up a treasure trove of points in week 9 and then compounded it by beating Moline in that showdown game. And at the time, as we're watching it, we're just feeling like Sterling was going to be a spoiler. They were just playing spoiler for Moline. I didn't even realize at the time until several hours later that they were playing for a berth. I'm sure they were aware of it. At the time, I'll be completely honest, I wasn't. When I did up my sorts on my points and Sterling popped up in a very high place, it surprised me.
I wonder how closely they were watching other games and knew, or like how deeply they had gone into it, any of the coaching staff, or if they just said, you know, let's just go out and play. I'm guessing someone on staff probably was that guy, right?
Yeah, I'm sure someone was probably aware.
So this is a good time to bring it up. Soucie and I were talking before we got on. So this obviously, just once again to clarify, this is Sousie's latest playoff projection that we put together. Again, this last one averages well above 90% on an annual basis. He's really close at doing this, but these are not the official brackets. Those come from the IHSA starting at 8 p.m. You'll see those unveiled. But looking through here as we talk, Soucie, you have Sterling in here projected as a 16 seed, which honestly, a fantastic draw for Sterling. And I bring this up here because if you look down, Chicago Payton takes that top line as a 9-0 team with the playoff points ahead of Prairie Ridge. There's no way around it. I mean, this is a absolutely terrible draw. I'm not saying that Prairie Ridge can't win the football game. I think they're probably the favorite to win the football game, but that is a awful draw for the Wolves against Nazareth.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this bracket, and I don't know exactly what the answer is, but history shows that the Chicago Public League generally does very, very poorly in the playoffs. You're looking at a 16-team bracket here that's likely going to have 6 public league teams in it, and only one of whom I think can compete at the level necessary to possibly advance a couple of rounds in the playoffs, if not paired against another public league team, and that's Morgan Park. The rest of these teams, I think they'll be extremely stretched to be competitive in any of these games. And it feels like it almost wastes a round in the playoffs for the teams that are in it, because and then you look at some of the other pairings of team non-public league games and you're like, wow, like that's a tremendously difficult first round game for both sides. Yeah. I mean, you look at that other projection up there, St. Francis Rochelle in the first round. Yeah. That is a heck of an 8-9 game. But then you're going to look at those second round matchups, and it's going to be like some of them are going to be running clock games, and then some of them are going to have to fight tooth and nail just to get out of the first round. And there's just an unevenness to it that just kind of makes me a little bit leery.
All right, let's see if I can go back here and find where I was at in questions. Connor asked, is Pana a lock as a 9 seed in 2A, Souce?
I think their situation's kind of weird because there's a lot of teams that are kind of around them in points. It's not the easiest way to break those down because there are so many teams that are sitting around that win total and point total. They're all kind of jumbled together. And in the chaos of the last few hours, you might miss a loose point right there. So I don't know if any team you can say is an absolute lock to be where I have them at. But I think that, just doing the math kind of in 2A, it's a fairly safe bet that they're probably going to be in that 8-9 game. They might be the 8, they might be the 9, but I think that they're roughly where they should be in that mock.
JW says, for second round, if the 2 home teams win, how do they determine the home team in the second round? Is it simply the higher seed or something else?
If the 2 home team wins, it is simply the higher seed. If you have a home team win and a road team win, the road team has not hosted a game as of yet. So they would host the game. So basically, as you go through the playoffs and you're trying to figure out who will host a game before you're looking down at the bracket, just look at who has hosted games. If you have 2 teams that have hosted an even number of games, then the higher seed will host. If it is a team that has hosted more games than the other team, the team that has less home games to that point hosts. So basically, there's an advantage to being a higher seed, but it doesn't always guarantee that you're going to be the home team in games.
He is Steve Soucie. I am Kyle Nabors. We are here live with you until 8 o'clock, until the IHSA show gets going this evening. What you're looking at here is Souce's latest playoff projection that he put together this afternoon. These, of course, are not the official brackets. If you want to see the full bracket right now, I'm just kind of perusing through it with Souce. We're answering your question. If you want to look through it yourself, go to FridayNightDrive.com. If you're not a subscriber to Friday Night Drive, we do have a digital sale going on all weekend long. Perfect time to join. You got all the playoff action all the way down to Bloomington. Looking forward to checking that out for the first time this year, Souce. Now, let's see. We got Alex Acevedo says, I see you have Bradley projected to play at St. Charles North. Who do you got Kankakee projected to play, Souce?
Well, Kankakee actually was affected by the one upset that happened in Saturday's games today. Bremen, with their upset win over Hillcrest, became the logical candidate to be the 16 seed in the in the 6A bracket. Kankakee is obviously headed towards the number 1 seed, as they are currently the only team in 6A that will be 9-0 as we head into the postseason. So Kankakee 9-0 would draw a 5-4 team. It looked all along that might be Danville, but then when Bremen upset Hillcrest, they became the likely candidate to be the 16th seed in the bracket. So that is the setup there. When you're looking at the 6A bracket, obviously, what stands out is where is East St. Louis on this bracket? Yeah. They're projected to be a 4 seed.
I mean, them and Lamont cannot get away from each other, can they?
No, they can't. I mean, this will be the third. If this pairing comes to fruition, it'll be the 3rd consecutive year that East St. Louis and Lamont have played in the playoffs. This time for the first time in the first round. But yeah, you're right. They can't seem to get away from one another.
Potential, not an easy first round matchup for Crete-Monee against Dunlap there, though, but a potential rematch with Kankakee and Crete-Monee. I'm still, I'm not. This isn't to disparage the K's in any way. One of the favorites in this class. I'm just shocked by the way they dismantled Crete-Monee last night.
Yeah, I really didn't see that coming. I kind of felt like Crete-Monee was gaining some momentum. And Kankakee had just, it felt like they had kind of had things on cruise control, but maybe that was with good reason. Maybe that's just the way. I mean, maybe they're just that much better than the teams that they're playing, because they have stacked up a number of lopsided wins since being pushed in the first 2 weeks of the season by Nazareth and Washington. Since they've gotten into Southland Conference play, if I'm not mistaken, they've gotten a running clock in almost every single game this year. So that's definitely a crazy situation.
How about Lincoln Way Central with that W over Bradley last night, Steve?
That seemed to be a wild one. I didn't see many details on that one, but that score seemed to be bouncing back and forth and all over the place. And boy, a heck of a turnaround story for Lincoln Way Central, no matter what happens to them in the playoffs. Going from 3-6 a year ago to 8-1 this year, and their only loss coming at the hands of rival Lincoln Way West early in the year. Just a really, really great story right there for Lincoln Way Central. Just doing a nice job and positioning themselves pretty nicely in this bracket. I think that's going to get them a top 10 seed in the 7A bracket ultimately.
Aiden asked, so Bureau Valley is out. I believe you said yes. Bureau Valley did not make it as a 4-5 team.
Yeah, they were just off the curve. I think they're probably at team 259 or team 260, somewhere in that neighborhood. So 3 or 4 teams in front of them that also didn't get in, but close, but no cigar for Bureau Valley in this one.
Grant Boxleitner, are South Elgin and Huntley capable of making a deeper run in 8A than they usually do? Seuss, what do you think here? Let's start with South Elgin.
I think this is 8A in general, I think, gives the opportunity for some schools to maybe make a little bit of a run here. I've talked to some people about this a lot, and it seems like the consensus is you've got Loyola and Lincoln Way East on a pedestal above everyone else, and then there's a gap. And there's a lot of teams in that second, I guess inarticulate way of saying it is kind of a glob of teams that are different in different ways, good football teams, but on some days they might be great, and then other days they might not be, it might not be the best showing for them. So kind of inconsistencies kind of in the middle of this field. You never know what you're going to get from some of these teams, but there's an opportunity for a lot of teams to maybe get hot and get on a roll here, and maybe, make some hay. So, and I think those are 2 candidates that might be able to do that. South Elgin has made some strides over the last couple of years, where in the past they would come into the playoffs as a 9-0 team, and you'd be like, oh, geez, there's a cupcake win for an underseed. But they've been a lot more competitive in the postseason over the last couple of years.
Yeah, if this first round matchup comes to fruition here against Lane, I like that matchup. Warren Oswego matchup in the second round wouldn't be easy, but it'd be a low scoring game most likely. I think that's a matchup South Elgin could stay in. I'm trying to find Huntley here. Let's see if I go back up here. Huntley Niles West. I like that matchup. If Joliet West was able to take down St. Ignatius, I like everything Joliet West has done, though. But I think Soucie would agree with St. Ignatius probably the favorite in that on paper.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a second round matchup between Huntley and St. Ignatius. I saw, the St. Ignatius team is different from the one we saw last year. They lost quite a bit. It's come together as the season's gone on. I like them coming into the postseason. I think that's a tough second round matchup for Huntley. I don't think that it's out of the question for the Red Raiders to win that game, though.
No, I don't either. It's definitely a situation where they got to do what they have to do, but it's an interesting bracket. Like for Huntley, what we're looking at right there, there's an opportunity there if they play good football.
Yeah,
third round's a possibility. I mean, it's a reasonable possibility.
All right, we're going to get one more question quickly, and then we're going to take a commercial break, pay the bill. So, Russ, let's see here. I think this was Russ or Russie. We'll go with in the 7A bracket. Did the Lincoln Park loss affect its seed?
Well, I actually had Peyton projected to win the game over Lincoln Park all along, so it has not moved them very much in reality from where they ultimately ended up in the draw. So. Lincoln Park, I had them projected with an 8-1 record, and that's where they ended up finishing. So the projections a fairly accurate, if not dead on, reflection of where they ultimately ended up in the bracket.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, everyone. Got a lot more questions and comments to get to. We'll be right back with you.
Come to Candlelight Inn, home of the original Chicken George and Jan Sauce. Dine in, carry out, and catering available. Located in Rock Falls and Sterling, Illinois, as well as Clinton, Iowa. Come try our original Chicken George today.
Need a roof, vinyl windows, or doors? Call R.E. Duchesne Construction. With an A+ rating for the Better Business Bureau and servicing Will, Grundy, and Kendall counties, call R.E. Duchesne. 815-722-2821. Financing available. Find out more online at reduchene.com.
Are going to come right down to the wire.
Yeah, he really likes this field.
Team of the Week MVP.
I like Reich.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
We're here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interest. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.
Nabors and Steve Soucie back with you here for another 25 minutes or so, breaking down the IHSA. Well, not the official IHSA brackets. Of course, those start at 8 p.m., but we are breaking down Sous's final projections and taking your questions. Now, Soucie, let's get back into it here. We got a lot more want to get to. I like this comment first from Jim. It says, thanks for all your research and hard work. I stayed up until around 2:30 a.m. this morning following your updated projection, but called it quits at that juncture.
Yeah, there were some dedicated people that were with me all the way up until the end last night, and I think I shut the feed off a little after 2 a.m. and we were hanging in there, and I think everybody was enjoying it. A lot of feedback from people, even at that late hour, talking about various things, and we went through all 8 classes last night with kind of a rough projection of what we were going to see. When I did finally put out actual new brackets last night, some of them as late as 4 o'clock in the morning, and then tweaked them a little bit more this morning, and was following along to any changes that came along Saturday. So, yeah, so definitely it was a fun time, and I'm really glad everybody seemed to be enjoying themselves and enjoying the experience, and we were having a lot of fun with it.
Adam says, took my first hack at projecting brackets this year. Looking forward to see how close I got, and also to see Rochester's draw. First off, this I've noticed this. This is a bit of a trend over the last few years, Souce. I'm going to call you a trendsetter at this point. More and more people taking a crack at putting their own projections together.
I don't know if I've ever been called a trendsetter in anything, so I guess I'll take that in stride, I guess. But it's been fun because there are a lot of people out there that are taking a deep interest in the process and kind of trying to understand it. And every once in a while, I mean, they'll come at me with a question that I hadn't even considered, and it opens up another possibility for how a bracket might be put together or something like that. So it's definitely an interesting situation that you have to kind of decipher and sift through. But it's fun. I've noticed there are quite a few people that are kind of popping up and trying their hand at it, and they get real frustrated when I tell them that you can't just take a class that you like. You got to do the whole thing or it doesn't work. And then once I explain that to them, I think I scare some of them off.
He wants to know about the Rochester. Looking forward to it. You got Rochester predicted as the top seed with a first-round matchup against Lincoln. The Rockets looking as good as ever going into the postseason. Yeah,
I mean, they had to scuffle a little bit last night with Sacred Heart Griffin. I thought they would win that game a little bit more comfortably than they did, but they they finished it out 9-0, and it's been funny because Lincoln is the pairing that I've had there, and there have been people all day that have been trying to convince me that it's not going to be Lincoln in the first round. And I think they're just trying to tell themselves. Lincoln, one of the fun stories this year, ending a really long playoff drought to get into the field. I think the Lincoln folks are hoping for a different draw. They don't want to deal with Rochester
I don't blame
again. And I don't blame them. But unfortunately for them, the math seems to be pointing very much in the direction of a Rochester-Lincoln matchup in the South bracket of Class 4A.
Just for clarification's sake, I haven't cracked a beer yet. This is the Sprecker's cream soda. Souce, I know this is a personal favorite of yours too, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm a big supporter of that.
Yeah, picked up some of that earlier today. Got to get something to keep yourself going this weekend. It's a busy weekend for us over here. Grandma Darlene, I love this, by the way, Souce. Grandma Darlene is sitting here in Scottsdale watching this with my fingers crossed. Will you tell me how Batavia is going to fare and who they're going to be bracketed with? Right, I'll stay watching. I love it. What can we tell Grandma Darlene?
I think Batavia, was mathematically locked in. I don't think I'm giving away state secrets here. They're mathematically locked into being the 7 seed. And that's because, in a nutshell, you've got 5 undefeated teams. Mount Carmel has a ton of playoff points. They drop down to the 6 seed. And then you find Batavia. So they're locked into the number 7 seed. That's where they will be when the brackets come out. Now, the intrigue comes into play with who will be on the other side of them. And there's definitely a huge grab bag of who that might be. They could end up with a 6-win Addison Trail, who has very, very low playoff points, hence why they would be seated around where Batavia is at. Or they could draw one of 2 of the 5-win Catholic League powerhouses. It could be Brother Rice. It could be St. Rita. So really kind of one end of the spectrum to the other one there. I think it's probably going to be a pretty difficult draw for Brother Rice in the opening round.
Oh yeah, Brother Rice. I mean, I saw this unfold last year for Jacobs, and I think this is a better Batavia team than Jacobs last year. And it was a good Jacobs team, don't get me wrong, but Batavia came in, or Brother Rice came into that game in that postseason first round and really took it to Jacobs. That's a really tough matchup for Batavia in the first round if that ends up coming to fruition.
Yeah, and that's definitely a situation where you hope for better, but that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles sometimes with these Catholic League teams that are accumulating regular season losses against quality opponents. It's just the way it works. 9-win teams going first, then the 8-win teams, then the 7-win teams, 6-win teams, 5-win teams. So if you've got some Catholic League teams that are good teams that have piled up 3 or 4 losses in the year, they're going to end up with a seed somewhere around 19, 23, 24, somewhere in there. And that's sometimes one of these higher seeds gets that unfortunate draw. And it looks like Batavia, it's a possibility that they're going to get a very difficult opponent in the first round.
Johnny says, what do we think about Sandwich and their potential?
You know, Sandwich is a really good story this year. I mean, didn't play varsity football last year.
Awesome story.
Fought their way into the playoff field. It did give me a little bit of pause when they lost to Marengo recently. Yeah. I thought that was a game that would get them in a little bit better shape. Ultimately, what's going to end up, Sandwich is going to be in the middle of the draw, but that might not be the worst thing in 4A North because I think we're going to have a public league, draw right at the top. You're going to have a 1 seed from the public league, another one. We already had one in 5A North. We've got another one in 4A North. 4A North is kind of a mess in that sense because there are just a very few teams, that have kind of like 1 loss. But then the next group, I mean, it's just kind of a hodgepodge in there. You know, when I look at that draw and potentially what it could look like, I mean, you got to take note of IC Catholic, wherever they land in this bracket. But, I mean, Richmond Burton's usually a fixture on that 1 or 2 line in this bracket, but they've got 2 losses. So they're going to drop down to probably a 4, 5, 6 seed area. So, yeah, it's definitely kind of, I think if Sandwich ends up where I have them projected, that's a great draw for them. That will give them an opportunity, I think, to make a mini run here. If that's the way the draw comes out, that is really nice for Sandwich. I think they have an opportunity to possibly get into the quarterfinals here.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd say they're a favorite against Ridgewood. I like that second round matchup there. St. Viator versus Richmond Burton's an interesting first round matchup.
Yeah, and you look at that and St. Viator kind of catching a little bit of a groove at the end of the season. Just an interesting team, a young team. Got some dynamic players on that team. And Richmond Burton, them losing two regular season games is kind of the headline breaker there after, going all the way back to 2018 to find previous regular season losses for this team. And even then, there haven't been that many. So finding Richmond Burton heading into the playoffs in 7-2 is definitely something that my eyes go to and say, this is different.
Jim says, are Dixon and Chicago Phillips still projected to be paired as a 2-15? And is this year's Phillip team as good as those in the past? You can see that down here. Seuss does have Dixon and Phillip projected meeting in the first round. What do you know about this Phillips team, Seuss?
Well, they're young, they early in the season they bit off a little bit more than they could chew, but they've come along quite nicely in the second half of the season. I mean, early in the year they played Batavia and were completely overwhelmed, but once they got back into the public league schedule, they gave some pretty good public teams, a pretty good fight. So, but the thing to keep in mind about that particular matchup when you're talking about Dixon and Phillips is that Dixon and Rockford Boylan are in one of those coin flip situations. Both 8-1, both lost to a 9-0 team, both have 37 points. The only way to break that tie is basically to go to the random number generator. So Dixon could end up hypothetically on the 2 line or the 3 line. And you're looking at that bracket right there. You could see a reversal. You could see Dixon with Plano and Rockford Boylan with Phillips. It's just a matter of how the random number generator spits it out.
Maria Lopez asks, how does St. Charles North have a better seed than Wheaton North, Seuss?
So this all comes down to non-conference scheduling. So it's all a playoff point situation. In the end, only 1 point separates these two teams because both played pretty good non-conference schedules. But St. Charles North was just a little bit better, and that's why they got the nod here in the situation for playoff points, because in the Duquesne, obviously both of these two teams play the same conference schedules for 7 weeks, so they have the same number of playoff points if they finish with wins in conference play. Then you have to go to the non-conference schedule. St. Charles North schedule just a smidge better, so that was what got St. Charles North to just a little bit better over the top of Wheaton North in that situation.
Both did they end up 7-2? 6-3?
6-3. 6-3. Yes.
6-3. I'm guessing Wheaton North won the head-to-head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's okay. Yeah. So there you go.
Wheaton North did win the head-to-head, so that was probably the question of why it was being asked.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out here.
Had they been tied in points, that's what it would have gone to.
Okay. All right, about 15 minutes left here. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up if you could for us. We really do appreciate it. Quincy Senior High, 6A or 7A, Souce?
Yeah, Quincy's been consistently in 7A, and that's where they're going to land when we have the brackets out there. They're gonna slot in as a top 5 seed in that bracket. As they've run the table, they go 9-0. I think in the end they'll probably end up in the 3 seed position. So that's basically where they're at. They've been very close to that 7A, 6A line all season, and I know a lot of people think of them as a 6A team, but there were some enrollment shifts around the state, and that put Quincy up towards the 7A group. They're a small 7A, but they are in the 7A field, and that's where they'll be when the parents.
Yeah, it feels weird to see them in the 7A field. And it also feels weird. Congratulations to West Chicago making the playoffs. It's awesome to see them crack the playoff field this year.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to talk with Coach Adam Chavez last night on the live show, and very excited about what those guys were able to do, and broke a long drought for that program and getting into the playoffs. So congratulations. That's I hope that matchup comes to fruition. That'll be interesting for both sides.
Here's another fun one. Ryan said East Aurora going to Belleville East. East Aurora, another team crashing the playoff field that we haven't seen in a long time, Souce.
Yeah, that's definitely a new name to be discussing at this time of year, to be completely honest with you. And that matchup that you're mentioning, definitely a possibility. Belleville East, a 7-2 team. East Aurora, a 6-3 team. So kind of, thinking in the back of my mind, a 10-23 game, an 11-22 matchup. That's kind of where those types of pairings would be, with, average to decent playoff points on both sides. They're not going to overwhelm you with a whole bunch of playoff points, but the two teams they have solid numbers in all those categories. So that seems like a viable option for a first round matchup.
The Clayton Simpson here from Momenta, former quarterback Clayton Simpson. What's up with the ranking for Class 2A? I have it. The rest of the class has gone 1 to 32, for example. Why is the 2A North loaded?
Yeah, that's all about geography. When you look at the potential 2A North bracket, they claim that it is on a north-south line. And if you draw that in a true north-south line, what you get is 4 undefeated teams, including the state's #1 currently ranked team, Maroa Forsyth. You get some tremendous 8-1 teams, including Wilmington, who did land in the 2A field as the class's largest school. But filtering either further down, you could have as many as 9 8-win teams. Yeah.
What logo do we have for Wilmington up there?
That is not the right logo. To change that.
So we made the Wildcats someone else here. When you're trying to plug in 256 teams into the bracket, that's going to happen every once in a while.
Yeah, sometimes you bounce them around. But yeah, I'll have to go back and check that one. I don't know what. I actually don't know what. I think that might be Illini West. I think that's the guess that I'm going to go with right now, that I have incorrectly logoed that with. So but this
is a loaded bracket. You are right, Clay.
It's crazy. I mean, there are potentially 9 8-1 teams on the north side of this bracket, And then you go down to the other side, and there's nowhere near that. I mean, so there's no balance here. Someone I saw earlier in the comments was asking about the 1 to 32 bracketing for all the classes. I know Clayton mentioned it as well. That was something that they had decided that they were going to go to, and then rising gas prices was the reason that they decided to cancel that. But some of these classifications, and especially you'll see it in 5 and 6A, I don't know if 1 to 16 is really helping us all that much. There are some really bad travels in those 1 to 16s. There's some pairings that I was drawing up today. I was like, oh boy, that's a 5-hour drive. And these 1 to 16s are supposed to be saving us that kind of travel.
You got an example I can pull up?
I think there was a game involving Carbondale, for example. Oh, here's one. The 8-9 game in 5A South.
TF North and Sacred Heart Griffin.
Yes, Calumet City to Springfield is a bit of a haul. So, yeah. So, I mean, and that's an example of what I'm talking about. And you can look at a lot of those in there. I mean, I don't know how much
Carbondale,
travel we're
Hillcrest.
saving. So, I mean, yeah, Carbondale Hillcrest is a terrible one. I mean, yeah, I know the South schools, when they're allowed to host games, they got to play somebody. So, I mean, really when it comes right down to it, I guess that's what we have to do. So,
Lou Nunez Jr. says, Steve, your Maine West bracket in 7A could have them traveling to Hoffman Estates, Downers Grove North for a potential second round matchup. They've never made it past the second round. Let's go check that out over here. We're looking at Maine West. My buddy who I think had the first comment of the night, Mike B. I had a text message from him, I believe, when I woke up this morning, already singing the praises of Maine West.
Yeah, Maine West is an interesting situation. They're one of those teams right now that I think still kind of has to prove it to me, though, because their conference is not the strongest. They don't have a lot of playoff points, which means in the non-con, they haven't exactly had a lot of arduous tests either. So we're going to find out real fast, especially if a matchup materializes like that one right there. Collinsville, a fast, athletic team that can do a lot of things. Maine West would get challenged right out of the box. So if that's the matchup for them, that's an interesting first round game.
Will Marist make it, Zeus?
Yeah, Marist was the first team out. They were essentially 1 point short of getting the points they needed after Loyola gave them their 48th point. It took 49 to get in. So Marist has the unfortunate distinction of being team 257 this year.
Billy Judd, bad loss for Hillcrest today to Bremen. They went from a home game to taking a 5-hour drive to Carbondale, he says, huh?
Yeah, according to the projections, that's what happened to Hillcrest. I mean, it looked like they were on their way to a 7-2 record and a favorable seed, 6-7, somewhere in that neighborhood. And having one of these long road trips, having that team have to travel to them. But that's what will happen to you when you go from 7-2 to 6-3 in a fairly deep bracket. You go from hosting to a road game, and in this case, potentially a very, very long road game.
A few more minutes with everyone before the IHSA show gets kicked off. We got Jacob Wolf. Nashville's not in the 2A North bracket, so it can't be that loaded. Like the comment, let's check out where Nashville is. You got to always pay attention to the Hornets. I've learned my lesson over the years. Sitting there as the 8th seed with a matchup against, is it Pana or Pana? I always mess that one up, Zeus.
Yeah, it's Pana. But we're looking at Nashville, and I think this is just an elaborate game of possum by Nashville. They lost a couple games in the middle of the season and gave me pause a little bit about their fortunes. But now I look at them and I'm like, hey, here we go. Maybe it looks like a little bit of a run for them if they get this bracket, because like you, I have a hard time discounting them. I think they're definitely an interesting team in a lot of ways. One of those ways is that they're a 2A team that's playing 4As most of the season and pretty solid 4A teams. So once they drop down into the 2A playoffs, it's like, hey, this is a little bit easier than what we're used to. So not to say that it expects to make them make a long run, but historically they've had seed numbers like this by their name before, and it takes a lot to get rid of them. So I think this might be another situation just like that.
Trying to figure out, cool guy, what do you think of the outcome, or what will be the outcome of the Wendell South versus George Washington high game? Is that a TV or pop culture reference? I don't know what that is. Do you know what it is, Suze?
Yeah, I don't know what that is either. I feel like I should, but I don't know.
I'm saying that's why, like, Wendell South sound familiar. I'm like trying to not popping through here. All right, let's see. Thoughts on Yorkville versus Whitney Young, Jason says.
Yeah, if that's a potential matchup, it's interesting. You're looking at that, and Whitney Young, obviously a public league program in 7A that obviously hasn't had a lot of playoff success because that's something that's eluded a lot of CPL teams. But Yorkville is a really, really gritty football team. It plays tremendous defense. I have a feeling Whitney Young's going to have a really hard time getting things going against that defense. Offensively, doing just enough to get by, and sometimes that's enough. But they're built like I like to see playoff teams with Yorkville. Fundamentally sound on defense, and do what you have to do on offense. Nothing flashy. We'll take a 13-10 win like they took over Plainfield North last night. But, I mean, this is about advancing and surviving, and it starts with having a really good defense.
All right, couple more minutes, guys. Devin says, who do you guys think is going to win 4A? Let's find out. So, what do you think?
I think you've got two teams that kind of rise to the front in this discussion right now. I think that's IC Catholic on the north side of the bracket. I think it's Rochester on the south side of the bracket. This was a debate that I would have included a third team in this mix for most of the season, but Morris landed in the 5A field. I was really, really intrigued to see what Morris could do in the 4A bracket. I think they're still dangerous in 5, but to answer your question, I think it's a two-horse race to the 4A title between those two teams.
I agree with you. And, I would have wanted to throw Richmond Burden in there, but, the loss to Morris is one thing. Following that up with the loss to Rochelle, I have questions about Richmond Burden at this point. So I think IC Catholic has to be the pretty heavy favorite in the north side of the bracket. I think we're pretty much caught up, Suze. We got to get going here. We got a couple minutes left before the show gets started. You got anything else you want to hit on?
Yeah, it was just a really, really interesting weekend. We talked about this a lot in regards to, getting those 4-win teams into the playoff field, and it kind of changed the landscape of what we were going to have the opportunity to see because, with those 4-win teams, you've got some dangerous 4-win teams in that group. They're coming in low seed matchups, so some of your first round games are against extremely high-seeded teams. So definitely a fun ride getting to this point. And some of these brackets, and I've seen them, I know what they look like, are going to be interesting to kind of dissect over the next few days and heading into the first round of the playoffs. And before you know it, we'll have 128 games going on around the state and pairing that field in half. So definitely a fun ride getting here, but certainly going to be a fascinating ride for the next 5 weeks. Kyle is off the stage right now and does not realize it.
How did I do that?
I don't know. You were off the stage. I saw you talking down there. You obviously did not realize you were not on the stage.
Yeah, I did not. Well, you make sure to stick to FridayNightDrive.com. That's what I was trying to say. Those brackets, once they are made official, will be going live on our website over the course of the next hour. All of our reporters are putting together first-round matchup previews for all of our local teams. Souce will be working hard to get some analysis up over the next couple of days. We're going to have a lot of content for you guys. Thank you, everyone who joined us this evening and asked questions. We really do appreciate it. Everyone enjoy the show. Souce and I will be back with you guys. If you want to join us live, 11 a.m. Monday, we'll be right here on YouTube. For now, though, for Steve Soucie, I'm Kyle Nabors. Talk to you guys later.
Come to Candlelight Inn, home of the original Chicken George and Jan Sauce. Dine in, carry out, and catering available. Located in Rock Falls and Sterling, Illinois, as well as Clinton, Iowa. Come try our original Chicken George today.
Need a roof, vinyl windows, or doors? Call R.E. Duchesne Construction. With an A-plus rating for the Better Business Bureau and servicing Will, Grundy, and Kendall counties, call R.E. Duchesne. 815-722-2821. Financing available. Find out more online at reduchene.com.
Are going to come right down to the wire. Yeah, he really likes this field. Team of the Week MVP.